From here, we'll move down to the ground or to some other flat surface that you feel comfortable reclining onto. Our first movement will be our glute bridge. And so we'll perform this with our heels on the ground and our body reclined onto that flat surface. And I will have you relax that neck so everything is in a nice neutral position. Again, we want to make sure that your heels are planted and not necessarily your full foot, and definitely not your toes. So when you have your heels on the ground, that is ensuring that we're going to be able to activate the muscles on the back side of your legs, so your hamstrings and your glutes. As you do this, we also want to make sure that while you're in this heel-based position, that your heels aren't too far away from your body. So we want them to be fairly close. You might even feel like you're kind of crowding your hips, but this will put us in a good position to then drive upwards and maximize that glute activation. So here we'll begin. Head will be reclined back onto the ground. We'll lift, short pause, and control back down. Here we're trying to get the hips to be in alignment with the knees down to the shoulders, and we don't want to overarch and lift too high. So everything in nice neutral position. And then once you get to this position, and even on the way up, you want to feel your heels kind of pulling towards your hips. And so that will be that hamstring and glute activation where you're almost trying to pull the floor towards you to get that activation. And then again, control back down. As you come back down, try to keep your hips just above the ground so there's still a little bit of tension in those muscles and everything's not fully relaxed. So go ahead, I'll have you get set up for this movement. We'll start heels on the ground, fairly close to the body, and we want to watch that we're getting that full hip extension, but not overextending. We'll put 20 seconds on the clock and we'll begin. Next up, we have our shoulder flexion. So we'll perform this in the ending position, essentially, of your glute bridge. We'll put the pinkies on the ground, and then we'll reach up overhead, tapping our thumbs while keeping our arms or elbows straight. As we're moving through this shoulder flexion, we want to make sure that the muscles in through the spine aren't moving or allowing us to reach a greater degree of shoulder flexion because of a spinal compensation. So as you perform this movement, if you find you're only able to go a certain distance, and then after that you have to move your body to get into a higher position, then go ahead and reset everything. We'll bring those pinkies back, and then only go as far as you can to where you know you're truly isolating movement at the shoulder joint. So pinkies to thumbs, the goal would be thumbs up overhead, but if that only occurs through compensation, then dial it back. So let's go ahead, we'll get set up in this pinkies to thumbs position, and especially as we reach overhead, we want to make sure that, again, our shoulders stay down and we're not allowing ourselves to go into a shrugged position. We'll put 20 seconds on the clock and we'll begin. Next up, we have your ankle circles, and we're also going to combine this with your point toes up and down. So for this movement, we'll get set up into this reclined position. Non-moving leg will be straight and toes pointed straight up. Sometimes when we relax, those muscles will pull the leg into an outward rotated position. So go ahead and focus on toes straight ahead. We'll get a good stretch in through the hamstring here. If this is a sensitive position for your knee, feel free to interlock your hands and place it right behind your knee as opposed to on top. But what essentially we want to do here is lock everything in place so that as we're moving the ankle joint, we're not able to get any accessory movement in through the lower leg. So this will be our starting position. We'll do slow, controlled ankle circles, one direction, and then we'll reverse that same movement pattern going the opposite direction. So this is an important movement pattern to not rush, to feel that full rotation. And then from there, we'll go into point the toes up and down. So as you peel the toes up, you're going to feel the toes come towards your shin. You'll kind of push through that heel to get a greater range of motion, and then we'll reverse it by pointing down, feeling that calf muscle activate to pull you into that toes pointed down position. So for this movement, we'll go ahead and combine them on both sides. We'll do 10 seconds of circles one direction, 10 the other, and then 20 seconds of ups and downs. Then we'll go right on to that same combination on your other leg. So we'll put our timer on and we'll go ahead and begin with your ankle circles. The last movement we have on the ground is your straight leg raise. So you'll recline onto the ground, one knee will be bent, the non-moving knee, and that foot will be flat on the ground. The moving leg will peel those toes up towards the shin, knee will be straight, and we'll lift the leg as high as you can without moving through the low back. So here that movement is occurring at the ball and socket joint in the hip. You should feel that quad activation, but then you'll probably also feel a hamstring stretch. So here we want to make sure we control all the way up and then control all the way back down so we're not collapsing and letting gravity kind of pull us into this ending position. We'll perform this movement 20 seconds on one side and then we'll switch 20 seconds on the other. So let's go ahead and we'll get set up, reclined on your back, toes straight ahead, and we'll keep the spine in neutral as we lift our straightened leg. Next up, we have your side-lying leg lift. For this movement pattern, we'll want to make sure your body is in a straight line. You're welcome to either support your head on your hand or relax that down into a neutral position by lengthening your arm. As far as a straight line goes, it helps if you have something on your floor, whether it's a mat or if you're on some kind of lined surface, a gym mat, where you look for the seam so that you can match up your body, the length of your body, with some kind of feedback point. And the reason I say that is because this is a very common movement that we can start to get pulled forward versus staying long in a nice straight line. And then as we creep forward, we're really starting to work the muscles that we're trying to avoid working, and we could very easily be feeding into a compensation. So nice straight line. Once your body is in a straight line, I'd encourage you to slightly bring your leg back so you're past the midline, behind the midline, and then we want to think about leading with the heel. So here we're targeting our gluteus medius muscle, and as we creep forward, we'll start to work our hip flexors, which oftentimes this movement is prescribed in physical therapy or just in a general strength program to help strengthen the backside and not necessarily strengthen the muscles that are probably already stronger than the ones we're targeting. So just a little background there, but this one seems easy, especially if you see somebody else doing it. It's like, oh, yep, you just lift your leg and control it back down. But there's a lot of ways the body will try to compensate to get into this movement. So everything's in a nice straight line. Then you're slightly behind. You want to keep the hips straight ahead. So sometimes when you reach back, we'll rotate open. If you need to, you can put your hand down. You can hold on to a dumbbell, something solid that helps you keep hips straight ahead. And then from here, we want to make sure that we're leading with the heel and not rotating and leading with the toes. So that's the last point here, leading with the heel. That way, again, we're able to activate the glutes. So we'll go ahead and perform this 20 seconds on one side, 20 seconds on the other, and we'll just bring the leg up, short pause, and then control back down. All right, we'll put 20 seconds on the clock, and when you're ready, we'll begin. Next up, we have our cat-cow. For this, you'll want to place hands underneath the shoulders and knees under the hips. You want your weight balanced so that you're not rocking back or leaning forward. From here, we'll go ahead and arch the back, tuck the tailbone, and relax the neck down. So this would be our cat position, and then we're going to alternate this by letting our belly sink down, and then we'll look up. So we're just moving or massaging the spine through full range of motion without any loading. Again, slow controlled movement pattern where you can feel all the muscles that attach to the spine either activating or relaxing as we move through these two positions. So go ahead, I'll have you get set up, hands under the shoulders, knees under the hips, and for 20 seconds, we'll go through our cat and cow. The last movement we have down on the ground is your high plank hold. You're welcome to turn this into an elevated high plank if you need to. And so you could use any surface that's a couple inches above the ground or several. We'll start with hands underneath the shoulders, and then your goal here will be to hold your body in a straight line. From here, once you're in position, I want you to think about slightly pulling your palms down towards your toes. So there will be a slight pull, which then fires up your core. So you're going to generate tension without any actual movement. And this is one of those that once you feel it, you'll get it. But sometimes when you're looking at it, you think that might not make a big difference, but it does because we'll activate the core muscles. So pulling those palms down, you might even think about pulling the toes up towards your palms. So activating the core, either holding in this position or on an elevated surface, where again, the goal here would be to be in a straight line, pull palms down, toes up. If you have a hard time with your wrists, something like this where you could even be in a neutral grip, that would be perfectly fine as well. So for this movement, we'll put 10 seconds on the clock. We'll hold that high plank either on an elevated surface or down on the ground. So let's go ahead, we'll get set up and we'll hold.